let's continue our discussion from where we have stopped in the last class. So in case, let's say, for example, if we are interested in calculating our head value, it could be total head or pressure head or elevation head of any particular chosen point. Okay. So how do we calculate that so-called total head or elevation head or whatever called as your pressure head at any point chosen in that particular flow net diagram? Okay, let's say, for example, I am trying to consider a point X where I am interested in calculating my total head, elevation head, and subsequently the pressure head values. Okay, so if I am interested in calculating the total head, elevation head, and pressure head at your chosen point X, so what I need to first understand is I should know where is that I am going to be choosing my reference datum. Okay, so with respect to the position of the chosen reference datum, then I can try to calculate. So wherever required, you want, it's up to you to choose your reference datum. Here, let's say in this case, I am choosing this position to be a reference datum. So with respect to this chosen reference datum, let's say this water available on the downstream is something 1 meter. The total water storage on the upstream, let me consider it as some 9 meters. So the total head difference, that is your small h value, is nothing but 9 minus 1, which is equal to 8 meters. So because of the total head difference of 8 meters, the water is trying to flow from what is called as upstream to that of your downstream. Now, once I say I have chosen my reference datum somewhere here, your elevation heads, whatever you wanted to calculate at any point, okay, that elevation heads are to be calculated with respect to this chosen reference only. Okay, so from here, the datum, whatever you were trying to talk about, datum is here. Okay, if I'm just trying to extend the datum onto this side, the position of the datum, what I have indicated, is represented like this. So if I say, if I understand where is the position of my reference datum, then let me first start calculating what are your total head with respect to different equipotential lines existing in this flow net diagram. So let us first start counting how many number of flow lines and equipotential lines I have got. Then we'll try to go ahead in understanding how many number of flow paths and equipotential drops we have got. So in the process, if I start writing down my number of equipotential lines, this is my first equipotential line, second equipotential line, third equipotential line, fourth, okay, yeah, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. So I have got 8 number of equipotential lines. So in that sense, number of potential drops are equal to 7. Okay, let me consider, for my easiness, I am considering this 1 meter number to be 2 meters, so that no, as I have only 7 number of potential drops, if total head difference between upstream to downstream is 7, so I am making my life simple just only for calculation purpose. So what is the total head corresponding to this particular position? That's the first equipotential line, whatever I have marked. So at that first equipotential line, how many number of, what is your total head that you have got with respect to the first equipotential line? So if I want to calculate what is my total head corresponding to this first equipotential line, okay, so what I can do is, first let me understand where is this chosen point, which is lying on the first equipotential line. At what elevation that first equipotential line, a point chosen on the first equipotential line, any point, let's say a point here, okay. So I want to calculate what is my total head at this point. So if I want to calculate the total head at this point, first, where is my datum? This is my datum. So from the chosen datum, the point where you wanted to calculate the elevation head is at the bottom, or is it at the top side of your datum? So what I have here in this case is chosen point where I want to calculate my elevation head is onto the bottom side of your datum. So bottom side indicates it is the negative direction. Okay. So whatever elevation head that you are going to be talking about with respect to the chosen point on equipotential line 1, so that elevation head, I'll simply say it is going to be a negative elevation head. And now at this chosen point, if I'm trying to insert a standpipe, what would be the rise in water level in that particular standpipe? So water gets raised in that standpipe till here. Okay, so that's nothing but 9 meters. So what is my total head corresponding to this equipotential line means pressure head is 9 meters, which is on the positive side. plus elevation head what I have got is minus 2 meters. I repeat, it is minus 2 meters because it is on the negative side. So automatically my total head corresponding to the first equipotential line is 7 meters. I repeat, total head corresponding to the first equipotential line is 7 meters. And what we have seen earlier from our discussions is that from one equipotential line to the next equipotential line, we are going to have a decrease in the total head value, which we represented it as your total head drop or potential drop. Okay, so how do we calculate the total head drop or potential drop between two successive equipotential lines? So that we represented as what is called as delta H, where delta H is nothing but total head loss per corresponding number of potential drops. So what is my total head loss in the problem? 7. Number of potential drops are 7. So what is my total head loss that I am going to have from one equipotential line to its next successive equipotential line? Means head loss is nothing but it is equal to 1 meter. So this delta H value what we are getting is nothing but it is equal to 1 meter. So let me move on to the second equipotential line to understand what is my total head. Okay, here is my second equipotential line which is indicated. So for this second equipotential line, what is my total head? Total head corresponding to this second equipotential line is equal to, so what was the total head corresponding to the first equipotential line? 7 minus delta H. So it's simply what I can write it as 7 minus 1, which is equal to 6 meters is the total head corresponding to second equipotential line. Likewise, for the third equipotential line, if I am calculating what is my total head, so which is equal to total head corresponding to previous equipotential line minus delta H again, which is 6 minus 1, which is equal to 5 meters. Likewise, total head corresponding to fourth equipotential line is 5 minus 1, which is 4 meters. Total head corresponding to fifth equipotential line is 4 minus 1, which is 3 meters. Total head corresponding to sixth equipotential line is 3 minus 1, which is 2 meters. Total head corresponding to your seventh equipotential line is 2 minus 1, which is equal to 1 meter. And the total head corresponding to your eighth equipotential line is nothing but 1 minus 1, which is equal to 0 meters. Sir, how come the total head corresponding to your eighth equipotential line is 0? Because if you wanted to calculate what is my total head at this position, so total head is what I can write it as your pressure head plus elevation head. So at any point on this eighth equipotential line, if I try to insert your standpipe, the water in the standpipe gets raised here. So my pressure head at point 8, if I am trying to write down, so pressure head at point 8 plus or elevation head corresponding to any point on that equipotential line 8. So pressure head is 2 plus your any point on the equipotential line 8 is on the negative side of the datum. And what is that distance on the negative side? Which is minus 2 meters. So plus 2 minus 2 gets cancelled, and it's simple that your total head corresponding to the eighth equipotential line is simply equal to 0. So once we understand what is the total heads corresponding to each of the equipotential line that you have got in the flow net diagram, then the next objective is to calculate, okay, what is that I am basically interested in looking at. So in my problem, what I am trying to calculate is, I have considered a point X in the flow net, somewhere in the flow net diagram. At that particular point X, I wanted to calculate my head values, which could be your total head, which could be your elevation head, which could be your pressure head. So once I understand what is my pressure head, then I will try to calculate what is the corresponding pressure with which the flow is taking place through that particular soil. So which is simply what we can write it as your pressure head into the corresponding unit weight of water, which will be calling it as your seepage pressure or pressure with which the flow is taking place through that particular soil. So if I want to calculate what is my head, different head values at this chosen point X. Okay, so where is this chosen point X? Chosen point X is lying on this particular equipotential line. So any point on this equipotential line will have some total head value which is equal to what is called as 1 meter, because total head corresponding to this equipotential line 7 is nothing but it is equal to 1 meter. So obviously point X is lying on that equipotential line. So what is the total head corresponding to your point X? Total head corresponding to point X is simply nothing but it is equal to 1 meter. Okay, so if I know what is my total head corresponding to your point X, then next objective is to calculate what is the elevation head corresponding to point X, what is the pressure head corresponding to point X. Okay. So first, let me understand how to calculate elevation head, because from the chosen datum, where is your point X? If I can understand, then pressure head can be easily calculated. So let's say the point X is chosen at a depth of Z meters from the datum in the bottom direction. So once I say it is at a depth of Z meters in the downward direction of your chosen datum, so my elevation head corresponding to the position of point X is nothing but minus Z. And then what is my pressure head? Pressure head is nothing but total head minus elevation head corresponding to point X. Total head is 1 minus of minus Z. So this tells me my pressure head, what I am trying to look at. Okay. So pressure head corresponding to point X is simply what I can write it as 1 plus Z. Okay. So once I know what is my pressure head, then if I wanted to calculate what is my okay, so my pressure head at point X is what I am getting it as 1 plus Z. So once I know my pressure head, if I want to calculate with what pressure or what is the pore water pressure existing, or what with what pressure the flow is taking place at that particular point X in your soil strata, means I can simply say the pressure with which the flow is happening at a point X, the flow seepage pressure or your pore water pressure, how much it is, means it's nothing but unit weight of water with which the flow is happening into corresponding pressure head, whatever you have at point X. So unit weight of water, standard value 9.81 into pressure head at that point X chosen is 1 plus Z. So if you know that Z value, I can substitute, and accordingly I can calculate how much is that so-called pressure head, how much is your so-called pore water pressure or so-called seepage pressure, whatever you wanted to calculate is simply can be calculated like that. It's not just at point X, wherever you wanted to calculate, simply you can try to calculate in similar way. So if I wanted to calculate my pressure head at that particular point, let's say this point where I want to calculate my pressure head is something Y. So at this point Y, I wanted to calculate my pressure head value. So how do I calculate my pressure head at this point Y? So where is this point Y lying? Is it lying on this equipotential line, or is it lying on this equipotential line? So this so-called point Y is neither lying on this equipotential line, neither lying on this equipotential line. But what I know is, okay, let me come back to write down my total head values. What I had for this equipotential line, my total head value, if I am correct, it was 7 meters, 6 meter, 5 meter, 4 meter, 3 meter, 2 meter, 1 meter, and 0.8 meter was the total head values of those respective equipotential lines what we had. Right. Now, where is your point Y? Point Y, what I am trying to look at. This is a point Y, what I am trying to talk about. So this point Y is somewhere in between the equipotential line, which has got a total head value of 3 meters, and equipotential line, which has got total head value of 2 meters. So in between these two equipotential lines, your chosen point Y is lying. So then in such case, from simple approximation, if I am required to calculate what is my total head value at this point Y, so total head value at that chosen point Y is nothing but I can take the average of the total head values of those two equipotential lines in between which your point Y is lying. Okay, average of these two values. So 3 was the total head value of the previous equipotential line before point Y, and 2 is the total head value of the equipotential line which is immediately there after your point Y. So average of this 3 plus 2 by 2, so which is nothing but I can write it as here 2.5 meters is your total head value at point Y. Now let's say this chosen point Y, whatever I am trying to talk about, let's say it is something at a depth of Z1 meters below your datum surface. So once I say my depth at which your point Y, whatever I have chosen is at Z1 meters from the datum in the negative direction, then I can simply say my elevation head corresponding to my point Y is nothing but, as it is in the negative direction, so minus Z1 depth from the reference datum. So then my pressure head corresponding to point Y is nothing but total head corresponding to point Y minus elevation head corresponding to your point Y. So 2.5 minus of minus Z1, which comes out to be what is called as your HPY, that's the pressure head corresponding to your position of point Y, is 2.5 minus of minus becomes plus Z1. So that is your pressure head. So once you know the pressure head at point Y, then pore water pressure, whatever is existing corresponding to the position of point Y, I can simply write it as pressure head at point Y into the unit weight of water. And that's how you can calculate your required for how much is the pore water pressure existing at that position of point Y. So let's quickly go through a problem similar to the concept whatever we have talked just now. So I have a concrete dam. Look at here this picture. Okay, this is a concrete dam, whatever is seen here. So what is said is we are required to calculate the pore water pressures, or in the other way I can call it as your uplift pressure, what is getting developed at the bottom of this concrete dam. So you are given with some 6 points, point A, point B, point C, point D, point E, point F, which are lying at the bottom of those 6 points. Where are they? They are at the bottom of your concrete dam. So at the bottom of that particular concrete dam, at respective positions of point A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever is given in the problem, we are required to calculate what is called as your uplift pressure. So question is, calculate your uplift pressure under the given hydraulic structure with respect to the positions of points. Where are we required to calculate those uplift pressures? At point A, B, C, D, E, and F. So at all those points, if I am required to calculate my pore water pressures, so how can I go ahead in calculating those pore water pressures at point A, point B, point C, point D, and point E, and subsequently point F? So for calculating my pore uplift pressures, which are nothing but otherwise I can also call it as your pore water pressures at all those points A, B, C, D, E, F, then what I have to do is, first let us start choosing some reference datum. Okay, the water level on the downstream is what I am considering as your reference datum. The water level on the downstream side of your concrete dam is what I am choosing as my reference datum. And with respect to that reference datum, then I will go ahead in understanding to calculate what are the total heads corresponding to different equipotential lines which are existing in that flow net diagram. So let us first identify what are my equipotential lines. This is one equipotential line. This is another equipotential line. Another equipotential line. Another equipotential line, the other one, the other one, the other one, and one more equipotential line, which is the downstream side. Okay. So once I understand what are my equipotential lines, so with respect to the chosen datum, let me start calculating what are my total head values corresponding to the upstream side and subsequently corresponding to the downstream side, and at all the other equipotential lines which I have marked there in the flow net diagram. Okay. So let me start understanding how to calculate what is my total head on the so-called upstream. So once I say I am interested in looking at to calculate what is my so-called upstream. So where is my upstream? Anywhere, either this or there, wherever it is. So let me consider this to be the level of your upstream. That is the point where your soil strata is getting started. If I consider it roughly. So what is my total head corresponding to this equipotential line? So if I want to know how much is my total head corresponding to this equipotential line, so if this itself is the reference datum, okay, this itself is indicating you the reference datum. So once I know this itself is indicating me the reference datum what I am talking about. So this is upstream. So at the upstream, which I am calling it as your first equipotential surface, first equipotential line, my total head value, if I try to calculate, so this line is lying on the datum, no elevation head. So automatically the pressure head, if I am trying to calculate, so what will be the rise in water level in the standpipe? This total was 8. Okay, so this total was 8 and this portion was 2 meters. So from the remaining 2 meters, if I start calculating, this is going to be 6 meter. So the pressure head corresponding to the upstream is going to be 6 meter and elevation head was 0. So automatically the total head at that point lying on the first equipotential line is simply nothing but 6 meter. Likewise, let me now count how many potential drops I have got in this particular problem. So from this equipotential line to this equipotential line, 1 drop, second potential drop, third potential drop, fourth potential drop, fifth potential drop, sixth potential drop, and subsequently the seventh potential drop. So my total head difference, what I have between upstream to downstream. So this total head difference, what I am trying to mark here is nothing but simply equal to 7 meters. So total head loss or total head difference between upstream to downstream is 7 meters. And now once I understand my total head loss and the number of potential drops, then the amount of total head difference between one equipotential line to the next equipotential line, which we can simply write it as total head loss by number of potential drops. So delta H is simply nothing but it is equal to 1 meter. So once I understand my delta H is equal to 1 meter, then now let me go ahead in understanding my total head values corresponding to different equipotential lines existing in this flow net diagram. So total head corresponding to this equipotential line was 7 meters. For this equipotential line, the corresponding total head value, what I'll be having is 7 minus delta H, which is equal to 6 meters. So for this equipotential line, it's simply nothing but 6 minus 1, which is 5 meters. For this equipotential line, total head value is 4. For this equipotential line, 3 meters. For this equipotential line, 2 meters. For this equipotential line, the total head value is 1 meter. And for this equipotential line lying on the downstream chosen reference datum, so my my total head value is simply nothing but equal to 0. Once we understand our total head values corresponding to all those equipotential lines, then let me identify at which points where I am trying to calculate my uplift pressures. Okay, so at point A, B, C, D, E, F, where are those points lying? Are they specifically lying on any equipotential lines? Yes. Point A is lying on second equipotential line, point B is lying on third equipotential line, point C is lying on fourth equipotential line, point D is lying on fifth equipotential line, point E is lying on your sixth equipotential line. That's what I am talking. This is what I am referring to. And point F is lying on your seventh equipotential line. So at all those corresponding equipotential lines, for all those equipotential lines, we have understood how to calculate your total head values. So point A, which is lying on second equipotential line, which has got a total head value of 6 meter. Point B has got a total head value of 5 meter. Point C has got a total head value of 4 meters. Point D, total head value of 5 meters. 3 meters. Point E has got a total head value of 2 meters. And point F has got a total head value of 1 meter. So once we understand the total head values of point A, B, C, D, E, F, then let us move ahead in understanding what are your elevation heads corresponding to point A, B, C, D, E, F. Where are all those points lying? Points are exactly lying at the bottom of your given concrete dam. So where is that bottom of the given concrete dam from the chosen reference datum? So the bottom of the given concrete dam, that is nothing but this bottom, is there at a depth of 2 meters from the chosen reference datum. Okay, so my elevation head corresponding to point A, B, C, D, E, F are on the negative side of your chosen datum and at a depth of 2 meters on the negative side. So automatically my elevation head is going to be minus 2 meters corresponding to position of point A, B, C, D, E, and F. So pressure heads of all those 6 points are known. Elevation heads corresponding to all the 6 points are known. Automatically your pore water pressure corresponding to point A, B, C, D, E, F if I want to calculate. So for which I should be knowing what are your pressure heads at point A, B, C, D, E, F. Then automatically I can say your pore water pressures at point A, B, C, D, E, F, which are nothing but simply we call it as your uplift pressures at those respective points at the bottom of the concrete dam. So my pressure head corresponding to each of those points, let's say pressure head at point A is simply nothing but total head at point A minus the elevation head corresponding to point A. Total head corresponding to point A was lying on your second equipotential line. So that second equipotential line has got a total head value of 6 minus the elevation head corresponding to position of point A is nothing but minus 2, which we have already talked about. So pressure head corresponding to point A position is 8 meters. So once the pressure head is 8 meters corresponding to point A, then the pore water pressure corresponding to the position of point A is nothing but gamma W into HPA. 3 kilopascals is the uplift pressure or the pore water pressure which is getting developed at point A. Likewise, if I want to calculate your pore water pressure at point B, then I can try to calculate your pore water pressure at point B is nothing but the pressure head at point B into unit weight of water. So how much is the pressure head at point B? Pressure head at point B is nothing but total head at point B minus the elevation head at point B into this gamma W term as it is, it gets carried away. So what is your total head corresponding to point B? Point B is lying on third equipotential line. Third equipotential line has got a total head of 5 meters minus elevation head corresponding to point B is -2. So this minus of minus becomes plus into gamma W. So that's nothing but 7 into gamma W. If gamma W is considered as 10 kilonewton per meter cube, so it's simply nothing but 70 kilonewton per meter square is going to be the uplift pressure at point B. Likewise, at point C, point D, point E, point F, you can try to calculate. Another question. A stiff clay, you have got a stiff clay layer, okay, so which is relatively considered to be impervious in nature. Okay, so this nature of soil layer is what we are considering it to be impervious. Okay, stiff clay layer underlies a 12-meter thick silty sand deposit. So you have got a thick silty sand deposit below which you have got what is called as your stiff clay layer. A sheet pile is driven into the sand to a depth of 7 meters. So into that sandy soil strata, a 7 meters depth of sheet pile is driven, and the upstream and the downstream water levels are subsequently shown in the below figure. So now if you try to understand, my upstream in this particular case, this is my upstream surface of water, this is upstream, and my downstream is this. So once I understand what is my upstream and downstream, what is the total head difference between upstream to downstream? Total head difference, whatever we have in this particular problem, is nothing but 3 meters. So because of this total head difference of 3 meters from upstream to downstream, the flow is taking place through the soil strata. And let us now see what is asked in the problem. We are asked to calculate. There are 3 set of questions which are to be calculated in this problem. The seepage beneath the sheet pile in meter cube per day per meter length is what is to be calculated. So which I can simply calculate it from your flow net diagram data, whatever is available. So that's nothing but Q is equal to K into H into NF by ND. I'm not multiplying into B because it's already said in the direction of your sheet pile for every 1 meter length is what I need to consider. So I need not multiply it as small b because b is given as 1 meter. Go back to the previous class set of equations which we have talked about to calculate Q depending on what is asked in the problem. So K value of the silty sand is given, which is nothing but 8.6 into 10 to the power of -6 centimeters per second. And H is nothing but the total head difference between upstream and downstream is known. Number of flow paths and number of potential drops are how many in this flow net diagram? Let us count. So number of flow paths. This is one flow path, second flow path, third flow path. Or in the other way, if I wanted, first let me count how many number of flow lines I have. Okay. So first flow line is obviously along the boundary of your sheet pile. And the last flow line is along the boundary of your clay strata, that is for sure. And this is another flow line, this is another flow line. So total how many number of flow lines are there? 1, 2, 3 and 4 flow lines are there. So if 4 flow lines are there, number of flow paths are nothing but 4 minus 1, which is equal to 3. And number of potential drops are how many? So for calculating number of potential drops, first let me know how many number of equipotential lines are there. So this upstream is what I'll consider as one equipotential line, second equipotential line, third equipotential line, fourth equipotential line, fifth equipotential line, sixth equipotential line, seventh, eighth, ninth equipotential line. So I have got 9 equipotential lines. So the number of potential drops are nothing but 9 minus 1, which is equal to 8. So number of flow paths are known, number of potential drops are known. So I have to simply substitute my data into this particular expression. But you have to be little careful because the K value what you are going to be substituting is in centimeters per second. So let me convert this centimeters per second into meters per day, because all the data which I am trying to calculate is in terms of the units of meter cube per day is what I need to calculate. So once I say meter cube per day is my requirement of calculation. So let me convert this K value also into meters per second. So in the process, K comes out to be equal to 8.6 into 10 to the power of -6 This is centimeters. So if I want to convert into meters, it's once again into 10 to the power of -2 per second it is going to be. But what I require is not just per second. I wanted it per day. So per day, 24 hours, per hour, 60 minutes, per minute, 60 seconds. So this is going to be my K value in terms of meters per second. So once I know what is my K value in terms of meters per second, oh sorry, it's not meters per second, it's rather meters per day. So K is calculated, H 3 meters, that's the total head difference is known, NF is known, ND is known. Please do substitute so that now you get what is your seepage happening below the sheet pile in meter cube volume per day per meter length of the sheet pile. Okay, this is the question one. Second question, what is the pore water pressure at the tip of the sheet pile? So at the tip of the sheet pile means at the bottom of the sheet pile, how much is your pore water pressure that is existing? So if I want to know how much is the pore water pressure existing at the bottom of your sheet pile, so this is that point where we wanted to calculate your pore water pressure, which is said to be the bottom of the sheet pile. So at this point, let's say at this point, I am calling it as point A. So at point A, if I want to calculate my pore water pressure, so pore water pressure at point A is what I want to calculate. So pore water pressure at point A is nothing but it is equal to pressure head at point A into unit weight of water. So what is my pressure head at point A? How can I write down my pressure head at point A? Pressure head at point A is nothing but total head at point A minus elevation head corresponding to your point A. So now what is my total head corresponding to point A? So what becomes my total head corresponding to point A? Total head corresponding to point A. Where is this point A lying? Point A is at the bottom of your sheet pile. Now from the bottom of the sheet pile, you have one equipotential line. This fifth equipotential line. So if I can say what is the total head corresponding to this fifth equipotential line, automatically the total head at point A is nothing but the same total head value of the equipotential line 5. So what becomes my total head corresponding to fifth equipotential line? So total head corresponding to fifth equipotential line is equal to total head corresponding to first equipotential line minus this. I can write it as, instead of writing it as first equipotential line, I can say fourth previous equipotential line minus delta H. This is one way. Or this can also be written as total head corresponding to first equipotential line minus how many number of potential drops do I have from first equipotential line to your fifth equipotential line. So potential drop from first equipotential line to the second equipotential line, 1 drop, second drop, third drp, and this is the fourth drop. So expression I can also write it as 4 into delta H. 4 times I have a decrease of delta H total head values. That's what it means. So which I can simply write it as H1. What was my total head corresponding to the first equipotential line? So if I want to know how much is my total head corresponding to the first equipotential line, so what I need to do is I have to choose some reference datum. So let me say this is my reference datum, what I am trying to choose. See, it's up to you. Wherever you want, you can choose your reference datum. Nothing wrong. The way how you choose your reference datum will not affect in the calculation of your pore water pressures, whatever you are trying to calculate. I repeat, so you have to be little careful. Your pore water pressures, whatever you are trying to estimate, will not subsequently have any impact on the position wherever you choose your reference datum. Total head values, elevation head values would certainly have the effect of the position of your chosen datum, but ultimately your pressure head value, what you are going to be calculating, is going to be independent of the position where you have chosen your reference datum. Right, that's what you should clearly understand. So once I say this is my reference datum position. So what will be my total head corresponding to this first equipotential line? Elevation head is 0, obviously. The pressure head corresponding to this point lying on the first equipotential line, water gets raised till here. So this water depth is 5 meters. So total head corresponding to first equipotential line is 5 meters. And let me calculate my delta H value. What is delta H means? It is the potential drop that you have between one equipotential line to the next equipotential line. So how much is it? It's nothing but H by number of potential drops. So which is equal to total head difference between upstream to downstream is 3 by 8. So 3 by 8 comes out to be 0.375 meters is the delta H value. So once I know delta H, then total head corresponding to fifth equipotential line is what I can simply write it as total head corresponding to first equipotential line. So how much was it? 5 minus 4 times that of your 0.375. Okay, so which I'll be getting this as, which is 3.5 meters. Once I know what is the total head corresponding to fifth equipotential line, which is 3.5 meter, so automatically I can say how much is my total head of point A. So total head corresponding to point A is nothing but simply 3.5 meters, because the, point A is lying on your fifth equipotential line. So once the total head corresponding to point A is known, then let me understand where is the position of point A from the chosen reference datum. This is my reference datum. From the chosen reference datum, point A is there at a depth of 7 meters in the negative axis direction. So automatically my elevation head corresponding to your point A is nothing but minus 7 meters. Total head is 3.5 minus of minus 7. So it comes out to be your pressure head at point A comes out to be equal to 10.5 meters. So once the pressure head at point A is 10.5 meter, then automatically 10.5 into unit weight of water, if I multiply, I'll be getting my pore water pressure corresponding to the position of point A. Next, let's move on to understand the solution of the third question. What is that third question specifying? Is the arrangement safe against piping? Okay, so what does this arrangement mean? Whatever the sheet pile that you have provided, is it going to prevent what is called as a piping failure in that particular soil strata? So what is this piping failure and all that? I'll just try to talk about in the next couple of slides. After talking about what is that piping failure and so on, then we will try to come back to this particular third part of the question, which we wanted to solve it. Okay, so the solution is what is given here. So as I told you, it doesn't matter where you choose your reference datum. Irrespective wherever you choose your reference datum, you are going to be getting the same amount of pore water pressure. So the problem is solved here by considering two different positions where the datum is considered. So in both the cases, you'll be getting the same solution. Next, moving on with what is called as a piping failure. Okay, so what does this basically a piping failure mean? Let us just try to understand. So before I start talking about what exactly is meant by piping failure, let me first tell you what is going to happen in the case of the soil is sometimes because of the flow which is happening from upstream to downstream, due to the flow, whatever is happening from upstream to downstream, along with the water particle, there is a possibility that the fine grained particles also will be carried away in the initial phases. And as the fine grained particles are also getting carried away, slowly the size of the interconnected void path starts increasing. Initially, the interconnected void path size might be this much. Then due to the escaping of small particles, whichever are encountered in the path of your water particle, so those water particles might be even carrying away your fine grained particle. So once the fine grained particles are carried away, the size of the void has increased now. Size of the interconnected void path, which is governing the flow, has increased. So once the size of the interconnected void path has increased, the rate of flow has increased. So once the rate of flow through that large interconnected void path increases, then the soil grains, which are relatively initially very fine particles, started moving away. Then later on, as the concentration of flow increased, then larger particles also slowly gets carried away, and in the process what you see is a kind of a pipe shaped cross section. That's a large size of void path gets formed because of the flow taking place from upstream to that of your downstream. So because of the large pipe shaped cross section of gap which is getting formed because of the flow happening from upstream to downstream, you would certain times see a kind of a failure happening in the ground. Superstructure which is existing above that kind of soil strata where piping failure has happened, so that superstructure might get sinked into the ground, or you might see the collapse happening in that particular superstructure. This is one of that example what we are referring to, the case of what is called as your pipe failure. Okay. Now, what exactly we talk about in the case of your pipe failure? When do I say what is called as pipe failure is taking place in the soil and so on? So let's just try to see here. Let's say, for example, you have water particles in this region. The water particles are trying to move through the interconnected void path, so that along the water particles, the soil grains whichever are existing in this particular flow region. So this is my flow region. Okay. So this is nothing but flow path. So in this particular flow path, when the water particles are trying to seep, fine grained particles are getting carried away. Initially onto that particular downstream, you might see some soil grains which are going out of this particular soil mass onto the downstream side. When we say the particles will start moving out of the soil. So here in this particular region, you are going to see more concentration of flow existing. Why do we say more concentration of flow existing? Because obviously whenever the water tries to flow from upstream to downstream, immediately on the downstream side, this is the downstream end of your structure. Okay, so immediately towards the downstream side, you have more concentration of water flowing, and less concentration of water flowing takes place as you move far away from your downstream of the particular structure. Okay, so as more amount of concentration of water flow is taking place through this particular region, so the fine grained particles will be slowly getting carried away from this region. And once the fine grained particles are slowly getting carried away, what would happen is the void path size slightly increases, and upon some time, all the particles, soil grains which are coming in contact with the water in this region flow path will completely carry away all your fine grained particles, and certainly results into what is called as a large opening which is getting formed there below your structure or in the ground somewhere at some particular depth. So once the large opening is formed, due to the weight of the structure, what is going to happen is, okay, so due to the weight of this particular structure, the structure tries to move in the downward direction because you have got a large void path which is available. There is no material here, it is what is only water. So you will be finding only the water in that large void path, and as the self weight of the soil is more, self weight of the structure is more, structure easily gets displaced in the downward direction because of the large void path which has formed. Most of the times in the rainy season or so, you would see, or in some cases of towns and cities, ground road path, you will road would be there, and at the bottom of the road, soil particles will be completely getting carried away because of the water which is trying to seep or water which is trying to flow in the canals and other region. And after some point of time, the road is no more going to be here. You will see a big depression getting formed in that particular road surface, or you will completely see the road there itself completely getting washed away or vanished away. So why is that happening? Because all the soil grains which are there below that region got carried away because of the flow which was taking place in that region. And what you have is only the void which is getting formed, and that void cannot take the loads which are coming from your superstructure. So automatically you are going to see sinking taking place. Okay, so most of the times whenever you have heavy flow, heavy floods happening, so all chances that you're below the structure, the fine grained particles are subsequently the complete soil solid particles gets carried away with the flow and results in the failure of the structure. Now, let us try to understand what does this piping failure mean. So piping failure is nothing but it is a condition where you are going to see the escaping of your soil grains, resulting into what is called as a large void shaped interconnected path getting formed in the form of a pipe. It looks like, because the size of the void, interconnected void size is relatively large, so it looks almost resembles what is called as a pipe. Okay, so inside your ground or inside your soil strata, so kind of a pipe shaped cross section gets formed. So such kind of failure is what we call it as piping failure. So now let us try to understand whether your structure, whatever you are trying to talk about, is safe against this so-called issue of piping or not. Okay, so how do we understand whether your structure, what is there on the downstream side, is safe against your the soil which is there onto the downstream is safe against what is called as your piping failure or not? So if I want to understand, first let me try to know, let's say this is a concrete dam structure for which roughly, let's say I have some flow line, flow net diagram. Okay, so let's say this is my flow net diagram. This is one equipotential line. Sorry, this should be horizontal. Let's say this is another equipotential line, another equipotential line. Roughly, I am drawing. Don't take into consideration of what I am trying to draw. Okay. So if you look at here, as I said, the soil which is there immediately on the downstream side of your structure is going to be more vulnerable to the effect of this erosion, or what is called as your upward movement of your soil grains. So this soil element, or this element which is getting formed in the flow net diagram, is something more critical, because if the soil grains from this soil element gets carried away in the upper direction, automatically the soil grains in the next element gets also carried away in the upper direction, and from the next soil element it gets carried away. From here it moves here, from here it moves here, from here it moves here. So that's what is going to be happening. So it's very important to understand whether the soil element what is there on this downstream, immediate downstream side, whether it is going to cause the failure in the soil or not. So if it is going to cause the failure, then automatically you say your piping failure has developed. Now, how do I understand whether your piping failure is expected to happen or not? Whether the soil element which is existing immediately on the downstream side here is undergoing the failure or not. So for that, what we try to do is, we try to calculate what is called as the exit hydraulic gradient, or rather I can say the hydraulic gradient of the soil element which is towards the exit, immediate exit on the downstream side. So when I want to calculate your hydraulic gradient for the soil element which is immediately there on the downstream side of the hydraulic structure, so hydraulic gradient is simply what we write it as here, total head loss by length of seepage. Okay, so now I am trying to talk about your hydraulic gradient where, that's the hydraulic gradient where I am trying to talk about only in the exit element. So in that sense, when I am trying to talk about the exit element, so in that exit element, what is the total head loss that is taking place? So if I want to understand what is the total head loss taking place in the exit element, so for that I should know what is the total head corresponding to this equipotential line and what is the total head corresponding to this equipotential line. Total head corresponding to this equipotential line is something Hi. The total head corresponding to this equipotential line, let's say Hi plus 1. Okay. So what is my total head loss corresponding to that exit element? It's nothing but total head available at the entry of that particular element minus total head available at the exit of that particular element. So total head corresponding to the equipotential line which is lying at the entry of the element minus the total head corresponding to the equipotential line corresponding to the exit of your soil element. So in between these two equipotential lines, you have your soil element in which the flow is taking place. So I can simply now say your total head loss which took place at in the exit element, that is the element which is immediately there on the downstream side, that total head loss only in that particular element is what I am writing it as delta H. And what is the length of seepage that is happening through that particular element means I am indicating it as, let's say, delta L. Delta L is nothing but the length of seepage. What is the length that your water particle is trying to travel within that exit element, what I am trying to look at. Delta L is what is indicated. So that is how we try to represent what is called as your exit gradient. Okay. And earlier when we have talked about what is called as your quicksand condition or sand boiling, we understood what is called as your critical hydraulic gradient. Okay. So we said what is meant by critical hydraulic gradient. We have discussed about what is critical hydraulic gradient. Critical hydraulic gradient is the hydraulic gradient in the soil where the effective stress developed in that particular soil is nothing but it is equal to 0. Okay. So now whenever your exit gradient, whatever you have in that particular soil element is greater than or equal to your critical hydraulic gradient, then automatically we understand that the flow condition here will try to lift your soil completely in the upward direction, because at the exit the gradient is higher than that of the critical hydraulic gradient of that particular soil. So automatically soil grains will not be standing there as the effective strength of the soil becomes 0, and particles will be completely getting carried away with your water which is trying to flow towards the downstream. So once the soil grains existing at the exit region of your downstream gets carried away with the water, then automatically the failure starts initially at the exit element, then gets extended to the next, and so on. You see a large void path getting formed. Okay, that results into what is called as your piping failure. So look at here the statements what are mentioned. If I exit, that's a exit hydraulic gradient onto the downstream side of that soil element exceeds the critical hydraulic gradient value. Firstly what we see is that soil grains at exit gets washed away with the water particle. So this phenomena progresses towards the upstream side, forming what is called as a free passage of water in the similar cross section, as like it looks like a pipe. So look at here, all the soil grains whichever are existing in this particular region are completely getting carried away with the water, and ultimately results in what is called as a void path, which is getting formed relatively of larger size. So you could see there is no more soil which would remain there. What you will simply have in that complete region is only water. So that would, such kind of failure what is taking place is what we call it as your piping failure. Okay, so this phenomena of failure what is happening is nothing but we call it as piping. Okay, so when does the piping takes place? So whenever your exit hydraulic gradient or hydraulic gradient in that soil element at the exit, if it is greater than or equal to the critical hydraulic gradient, so we see that your piping failure takes place. Now, how do I ensure whether your so-called structure is safe against your piping failure or not? So if I want to understand, so typically I can try to calculate what is the factor of safety against your piping failure. So if I want to calculate the factor of safety of that particular structure against the piping failure, so factor of safety against the piping failure is nothing but what is maximally allowed to what is existing, what is getting developed. Okay, so it's the ratio of critical hydraulic gradient to that of your exit hydraulic gradient. So that ratio is what we call it as your factor of safety against piping. Typically, in a proper design, if I want to ensure the safety of that particular hydraulic structure, so we try to ensure a factor of safety against piping of somewhere around 5 to 6. A very higher factor of safety is what we are going to maintain to ensure that there will not be any failure happening in your hydraulic structure. So there is a note which is specifically mentioned here. We use high value for the factor of safety because of the disastrous consequences of the failure. So because if the soil grains on the downstream gets carried away, then automatically we understand how much disastrous issue we are going to have with that particular hydraulic structure. So that's the reason why we prefer to go for a very high factor of safety. Yeah, let me come back to solve one problem which we have already solved earlier, but with respect to this case what is asked here. The same second example what we have taken up, but with an add-on question here. Is the arrangement safe against piping? So what is that arrangement means? Here in the problem we had a diaphragm wall, if you can recall. So I'll just try to show you those slides. This was my example what was given to you, where you had a cutoff wall or a diaphragm wall which is indicated here. Okay. So in the problem, we have tried to calculate the quantity of flow happening. In example 2, we tried to calculate the quantity of flow happening from upstream to downstream from the bottom of this cutoff wall or diaphragm wall. Okay. Now, what is asked is whether the soil element which is there immediately at the exit, look at here where I am trying to shade it. So whether the soil element which is there immediately at the exit of your concrete dam structure which is provided with a cutoff wall, so whether this is safe. Safe against what? Safe against your piping failure. So if that is the case, then let us try to understand how to calculate whether that particular soil element, whatever is existing on the downstream, that's the exit point, whether the soil element here is safe against the failure of corresponding to piping or not. So if I want to know, so what I should do, first I should be calculating what is the critical hydraulic gradient for this particular case. Okay, and then I have to calculate what is the exit hydraulic gradient corresponding to that chosen element. And if I start calculating the ratio of your critical hydraulic gradient to that of your exit hydraulic gradient, which tells me what is called as a factor of safety against piping failure. So depending on the factor of safety value that we get for that particular case, then we'll be able to conclude, okay, whether it is safe or not. Is the arrangement of providing that particular cutoff wall is ensuring the structure to be safe against your piping issue or not. So in general, if you are required to calculate your critical hydraulic gradient, so how do we calculate the critical hydraulic gradient? So critical hydraulic gradient is nothing but GS minus 1 by 1 plus E. If this particular soil in which the flow is taking place, if GS value and the void ratio of that particular soil is given, then you can calculate your critical hydraulic gradient. In case that particular data is not known, in general, what we know regarding your critical hydraulic gradient is critical hydraulic gradient roughly varies in between 0.9 to 1.1. So approximately you can take that I critical value as simply equal to 1. Roughly. Okay. So once I know I critical is equal to 1, if no data of GS and void ratio of the soil is given, then you can simply write your I critical as equal to 1. Okay. If I critical is equal to 1, then next objective is to calculate your I exit. What is this I exit mean? How do we calculate the exit hydraulic gradient? So exit hydraulic gradient is nothing but head loss happening in that particular soil element which is there at the exit by length of seepage in that particular soil element. So what is the total head loss that is taking place in this particular soil element? So if I want to understand what is the total head loss corresponding to that particular soil element, look at that particular soil element what I am referring to. If I know the total head corresponding to this equipotential line, if I know the total head corresponding to this equipotential line, then my problem is complete, because once I know the total head corresponding to this equipotential line and this equipotential line, total head difference between this equipotential line is and this equipotential line is nothing but we call it as your delta H. That is a head loss happening through that particular soil element. So in the process, if you calculate, I'm not going to in details again to calculate what is my delta H value. Please go back to calculate it and get that delta H value, because delta H in the other way I can also write it as simply H by number of potential drops. H is the total head loss what you have between upstream and downstream. So in this particular problem, the total head loss what we have is 45 meters. So 45 by number of potential drops. Let's say number of potential drops in this case, if I want to calculate from this equipotential line to this equipotential line, it is 1 drop, second drop, third drop, fourth drop, fifth drop, sixth drop, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 drops. Okay. So ND value is here 14. So delta H I have got. Next is the length of seepage. Okay. So let's say in the problem, the average length of flow through that particular element is given as 3 meters. Okay. Consider this the data which is given in the problem. Okay. 3 meters is the average length of seepage happening through that particular soil element. So automatically my exit hydraulic gradient is going to be, so your 45 by 14 is nothing but 3.2, which is your delta H value. So 3.2 divided by 3, which is going to give me a value of 1.1. So your exit hydraulic gradient is approximately what we are getting it as 1.1, whereas your critical hydraulic gradient is approximately around 1. So which says that the factor of safety against piping, if I am trying to calculate, which is nothing but critical hydraulic gradient by exit hydraulic gradient. So my critical hydraulic gradient value is 1 and exit hydraulic gradient value is 1.1. So I'll be getting that ratio of factor of safety approximately around 0.9 or so. So factor of safety less than 1 clearly indicates that failure is going to be happening. But however, though the factor of safety is greater than 1, but still in order to ensure compulsory complete safety of your hydraulic structure, we at least need to have a factor of safety of 5 to 6. Okay. But however, if the factor of safety what we are getting is less than or equal to 1, automatically indicates that the failure is going to be happening in that particular hydraulic structure. Yeah. So earlier one problem, that's a problem 4, where question number C, we stopped it. We said we'll try to talk about it later. So is the arrangement whatever is provided is safe against piping or not? So this kind of sheet pile what is provided there, is it trying to minimize the failure what is expected to happen through your soil? So if I want to calculate, so I can try to do that. So please come back to the exit element. This is my exit element what I am trying to look at. The average length of seepage through this exit element is already given 2.6 meters in the problem. And yeah, let me go ahead in understanding what was the total head difference potential drop that we had between two successive equipotential lines. So which we have seen it as H by ND, where H was 3, ND was 8. I'm just recalling whatever I have solved little earlier in the couple of slides before. So delta H, I had it as 0.375 meters. So if I want to now calculate my exit hydraulic gradient is nothing but delta H by delta L. So delta H is 0.375 and my delta L value, that's the length of seepage through the soil element, is 2.6. So if I start calculating that I exit, I'll be getting the I exit value to be something. And look at here that I exit value from the problem. So I exit value, what we are going to be getting is 0.144, and I critical, because the specific gravity of soil solids in the problem is given, and your void ratio is also given in this particular problem. So as void ratio and specific gravity of soil solids is given, then I can calculate your critical hydraulic gradient based on that expression what we have just earlier seen. Okay, gs minus 1 by 1 plus c. So from that expression, I can get what is my critical hydraulic gradient. So critical hydraulic gradient is known, exit hydraulic gradient is known. Then the factor of safety against piping is the ratio of your critical hydraulic gradient by exit hydraulic gradient. So if you calculate, you are getting the value to be 6.7, which is very much higher than that of year 5. So I can simply say your arrangement of sheet pile is clearly ensuring the safety of your structure, whatever hydraulic reservoir or whatever it is. So it is safe against what is called as your piping failure. Okay, so we'll stop our discussion for today here.